All right, what's up, everybody? My name is Joe Brown, and this is Heresy Financial. I did an interview with Mark Moss. If you haven't seen that already, it's about 45 minutes long. I posted that earlier this morning, and it's a fantastic conversation. Highly recommend it, and you can watch it on 2x speed if that's too long for you. But I wanted to address one of the questions that I saw come up a lot in the comments because Mark mentioned something about the energy that's required to create Bitcoin and how that relates to it keeping its value. And many of you rightly pointed out in the comments section that sounded pretty much like the labor theory of value, which is demonstrably false. And so basically pointing out that just because something requires energy or labor to create doesn't necessarily give it value. It's not sufficient to create value in something. So I wanted to address the concerns because I think what he was saying was misunderstood, and I didn't catch it while we were talking. And I want to clarify the point that he was trying to make there and talk about how that aspect of Bitcoin is not it's not it doesn't really have a lot to do with the labor theory of value here. So we're going to get into that. Ready? Let's dive in. Okay, so here's the Strawman argument, which I think many people heard and are saying, hey, this is wrong. The argument is, hey, Bitcoin requires energy to create and to maintain the network. It requires electricity, energy, and so therefore it has value. And that is obviously not correct. That's demonstrably false. That is called the labor theory of value, that states that the value of an output is dependent on the value of the inputs. Like the labor or the cost of the resources that go into creating it. And so a good example to show why that's not true is that if I go out into the desert and I build a giant pile of rocks, I just pile a bunch of rocks, really high. It could take me 8 hours. It could take me all week, depending on the size of the rocks and the size of the pile that I build. But ultimately, at the end, it's going to take a lot of energy, a lot of labor to produce that. And at the end, I'm going to have a pile of rocks that the market will have zero value for. There's no value for that. Just because the inputs were valuable doesn't mean the output is valuable. And then similarly, if I come up with an idea for some content, something to talk about for a video that I post on YouTube, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, I normally put in about the same amount of labor, of effort into a video. And some of my videos do fairly well and they get a lot of views. Some of my videos do fairly poor and they get very few views. And the ones that do much better didn't take more effort from me. They didn't require more labor from me, yet the market values them higher. They generate more views, and therefore it generates more revenue for me. So same amount of labor input, different amount of value that comes from the market deciding it's got more value. So value is more subjective. But that's not what's being claimed about Bitcoin here. So first, we have to look at the way that fiat money works. Fiat money, which is the US dollar, the yen, the euro, whatever, it is created out of nothing. So the value that it has is value by declaration. That's what fiat means. Fiat means in Latin by declaration. So its value is put onto it by law, by coercion, basically. And so the creation of that fiat money then necessarily undermines the production of others. Because if you or I want more money, what we have to do is we have to create value to society. We have to create a cheeseburger and create a building to sell those cheeseburgers out of, and then sell those cheeseburgers to the market. We have to sell our time or our labor to an employer. We have to go get something from a garage sale, like an old table, sand it down, paint it, create more value to the market, and go sell it back. So we have to do something. We have to create value, provide value in order to acquire money. But if the money issuer, in many cases it's the central government, but most of the time that's through the central bank, if the government wants more money, they press a button. and then they can get an unlimited quantity of money that way, and it requires no labor or no energy or no value creation in order to acquire more purchasing power. And then what they do with that is they at least somewhat push the free market out of competition to purchase something, because they're now sending new money that's been created out of nothing to purchase something that is crowding out the ability of, at least somewhat, to some extent, crowding out the ability of other people to buy those same things. And so therefore, the purchasing power of governments, which comes from money created out of nothing, is only there at the expense of the purchasing power that it took from you and I, from free market participants who don't have the ability to create that money out of nothing. And the test to push that to its extreme is to say, okay, what if everybody could print dollars at their printer at home? What if counterfeiting wasn't illegal? And I say counterfeiting with quotes because what the Federal Reserve does, or what the government does when they create money out of nothing, is counterfeiting, right? That's creating new dollars. So what if everybody could do that? Well, if everybody could print money at home, then it would be no longer necessary for you to produce value to get your hands on dollars. And so you could just go home and print, and then you take those dollars to the store to go buy something. But that store now, they can also print those dollars. They can also press a button to get dollars. So they're not going to give you deodorant. They're not going to give you soap. They're not going to give you milk. They're not going to give you bread or chocolate bars or a brisket for your paper dollars, because they can just go press a button to get those dollars. So all of a sudden, immediately, all dollars lose their purchasing power 100%, because there's no labor required in order to acquire that money. And so the creation of money out of nothing undermines the value of real production. Okay, so money that needs labor or energy in order to be created is necessary but not sufficient for money to be good. So now to Bitcoin. Bitcoin does, in reality, it needs labor or energy to be created. That's what mining is, right? You need electricity, you run your mining rigs, and that secures the network. Just like gold, right? In order to get your hands on newly created gold, you have to go dig a hole in the ground, get the rocks out of the ground, break it apart, melt them down, refine it. There's labor and energy required in acquiring gold. The only other way to get your hands on, let's say, Bitcoin or gold is to provide value, right? You have to give something to the other person who holds that gold or Bitcoin, something that they value more than that gold or Bitcoin. Whether that's a good or a service or another form of money, you have to give something of value in order to get that. And that can be value that you've created from a product or a service or money, which I'll get to in a moment. That money is just the storage of prior created value. Okay, so just like for you need labor or energy to get more money. So all money is a way to store your labor or your energy, because the moment that you create value, provide value to society, you accept some form of money in return for that, and you store that value in that money until you choose to transact and send that money back out for something else, some other value that somebody else has created. Okay, so if you hold dollars, US dollars, let's say, or yen or euros or whatever, you hold fiat money, your labor or your energy that you're storing in that money can be undermined by somebody with no corresponding labor or energy. The government. They can create money out of nothing. So they're undermining the value of your labor, your energy, by creating their money out of nothing when you can't do that. But if you hold, let's say, gold or Bitcoin, there are only two ways that somebody can acquire it, because those can't be created like by just like for gold, the laws of physics, right? Unless you are the heart of a dying star or the collision of two neutron stars, you cannot create new gold. And Bitcoin, I won't get into it, but Bitcoin, there's limited supply. So same thing, just from a digital perspective. So there's only two ways you can acquire either gold or Bitcoin. One of those is mining. You get the new supply, but it requires labor or energy to do that, right? It requires capital, resources in order to do that. So for gold, you have to dig it out of the ground, like I described earlier. For Bitcoin, you have to secure the network. The only other way acquire some Bitcoin or gold for yourself is to create value to somebody else, provide value to somebody else for their previously acquired money, which they got by producing value for society. So the fact that gold or Bitcoin cannot be created out of nothing means that they maintain the value required to produce more of themselves. So I'll say that again. The fact that gold and Bitcoin cannot be created out of nothing, that they require labor or energy to create more of, means that they maintain at least the value required to produce more of themselves. So an example of this, going the opposite way, is what if an asteroid made purely of gold tomorrow hits the Earth? As it enters the atmosphere, it breaks apart into a billion pieces, and just massive clumps of gold land in everybody's backyard. Everybody goes out into the backyard, has gold. That's the same thing as my description earlier of everybody having a money printer, right? Because all of a sudden, what you need to do to get your hands on gold is go out in your backyard and pick it up. And then if you go and try and get other people's value in exchange for that, well, they can just go to their backyard and pick up a big hunk of gold. And so the value relative to existing value, the value of that gold relative to the stock of goods and services, let's say the stock of wealth, plummets immediately because now the new labor or energy required to acquire new gold has plummeted. It's basically free. It's like the money printer, everybody having access to being able to counterfeit dollars. So insofar as the previous labor or energy is still valued by the market, the money will retain the value of that energy needed to produce more of it. So, if an asteroid of gold hits the Earth, the market will no longer value the energy that it used to require to get that gold because the market conditions changed. So, the previous energy required to produce gold doesn't necessarily mean that won't change in the future if some other circumstance happens, like a gold asteroid. Okay, so in that is also the comparative value versus the existing stock of goods and services. So even if the production energy or labor required doesn't change, you still have to weigh it versus the existing stock of wealth. So there's still the element of subjectiveness associated with the value even of money. So in conclusion, the fact that you need to use energy to produce Bitcoins is not what gives it its value. That's the labor theory of value. It's demonstrably false. But the fact that energy or labor is required to acquire new or existing Bitcoins, or gold for that matter, means that the value of that money, gold or Bitcoin, cannot be undermined or stolen as it is with fiat by the creation of it out of nothing. And to the extent that the market still values the labor or energy that's required to acquire new units of that money, that value will be stored in that money so long as the new supply of that money cannot be created with zero or less labor than it currently takes. So I hope that clears things up. And if you have any questions about what I said, because I know we got deep into the weeds there on what gives value, and especially with monetary theory there. So let me know if you have questions or comments on what I said, if anything didn't make sense, and I'll try and answer as many of you as possible. As always, really appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.